Book of Life, Chapter 12. I woke up to Matthew's cool hand sliding under my pajama top, his lips soothing against my damp neck. "Happy birthday," he murmured. "My own private air conditioner," I said, snuggling against him. A vampire husband brought welcome relief to the tropical conditions. What a thoughtful present. "There are more," he said, giving me a slow, wicked kiss. "Fernando and Sarah?" I was almost past caring who might hear our love-making, but not quite. Outside, in the garden hammock, with the paper. "We'll have to be quick then." The local papers were short on news and long in advertisement. They took 10 minutes to read, 15 if you were shopping the back-to-school sales or wanted to know which of the three grocery chains had the best deal on bleach. "I went out for the New York Times this morning," he said. "Always prepared, aren't you?" I reached down and touched him. Matthew swore in French. "You're just like Vern, such a Boy Scout." "Not always," he said, closing his eyes. Not now, certainly." "Awfully sure of yourself, too," my mouth sliding against his in a teasing kiss. "The New York Times. What if I were tired, cranky, or hormonal? The Albany paper would have been more than enough to keep them busy then. I was relying on my presence to sweeten you up." "Well, I don't know." A sinuous twist of my hand elected another French curse. "Why don't I finish unwrapping this one, and then you can show me what else you've got." By 11 o'clock on my birthday, the mercury had already climbed to above 90 degrees. The August heat was showing no signs of breaking. Worried about Sarah's garden, I spliced together 4 hoses using a new binding spell and some duct tape, so I could reach all of the flower beds. My headphones were jammed into my ears, and I was listening to Fleetwood Mac. The house had fallen eerily silent, as if it were waiting for something to happen. I found myself missing the beat of my parents' favorite band. While dragging the hose across the lawn, my attention was momentarily caught by the large iron weather vane sprouting from the top of the hop barn. It hadn't been there yesterday. I wondered why our house was tinkering with the outbuildings. While I considered the question, 2 more weather vanes popped out of the ridgepole. They quivered for a moment like newly emerged plants and then whirled madly. The motion stopped. They all pointed north. Hopefully their position was an indication that rain was on the way. Until then, the hose was going to have to suffice. I was giving the plants a good soaking when someone engulfed me in an embrace. "Thank God, I've been worried about you." The voice was muted by the sounds of drums and guitars, but I recognized it nonetheless. I ripped the headphones from my ears and turned to face my best friend. His deep brown eyes were full of concern. "Chris!" I flung my arms around his broad shoulders. "What are you doing here?" I searched his features for change, but found none. Still the same close-cropped curly hair, still the same walnut skin, still the same high cheekbones angled under strange, straight eyebrows, still the same wide mouth. "I'm looking for you," Chris replied. "What the hell is going on? You totally disappeared last November. You don't answer your phone or your emails. Then I see the fall teaching schedule, and you're not on it. I had to get the chair of history department drunk before he spilled that you were on medical leave. I thought you were dying, not pregnant." "Well, that's one less thing I have to tell him." "I'm sorry, Chris. There was no cell phone reception where I was, or internet. You could have called me from here," he said, not yet ready to let me off the hook. "I left messages for your aunts and sent letters. Nobody was responded." I could feel Matthew's gaze, cold and demanding. I felt Fernando's attention too. "Who is this, Diana?" Matthew asked, quietly coming to my side. "Chris Roberts, and who the hell are you?" Chris demanded. "This is Matthew Claremont, fellow of All Souls College, Oxford University." I hesitated. "My husband." Chris's mouth dropped. "Chris," Sarah waved from the back porch. "Come here and give me a hug." "Hi, Sarah." Chris's hand rose in greeting. He turned to give me an accusatory look. "You got married?" "You're here for the weekend, right?" Sarah called. "That depends, Sarah." Chris's shrewd glance moved from me to Matthew and back. on? Matthew's brow rose in an aristocratic disdain. On how long it takes me to figure out why Diana married somebody like you, Claremont, and whether you deserve her, and don't waste your Lord of the Manor act on me. I came from a long line of the field hands. I am not impressed, Chris said, stalking towards the house. Where's Em? Sarah froze, her face white. Fernando leapt up the porch to join her. Why don't we go inside? He murmured, trying to steer her away from Chris. Can I have a word? Matthew asked, putting a hand on Chris's arm. It's all right, Matthew. I had to tell Diana, and and I'll tell Chris too. Sarah's throat work. Emily had a heart attack. She died in May. Oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry. Chris enveloped her in a bone-crushing hug. Chris enveloped her in a less bone-crushing version of the hug he'd given me. He rocked slightly on his feet, his eyes screwed tightly shut. Sarah moved with him, her body relaxing and open further than tight and full of grief. My aunt had not yet gotten over Emily's death, like Fernando. She might never get over the fundamental loss, but there were still small signs that she was slowly processing the learning to live again. Chris's dark eyes opened and sought me over Sarah's shoulder. They held anger and hurt, as well as sorrow and unanswered questions. Why didn't you tell me? Where have you been? Why didn't you let me help? I'd like to talk to Chris, I said softly, alone. You'll be most comfortable in the keeping room. Sarah drew away from Chris and wiped her eyes. The nod she gave me encouraged me to tell him our family secret. Based on the tightness of his jaw, Matthew was not feeling as generous. Call me if you need me. Matthew raised my hand to his lips. There was a warning squeeze, a tiny nip on the knuckle of my ring finger as to remind me and him that we were husband and wife. Matthew reluctantly released me. Chris and I passed through the house to the keeping room. Once we were inside, I slid the door shut. You're married to Matthew Claremont? He exploded. Since when? About 10 months. It all happened very quickly, I said apologetically. I'll say, Chris lowered his voice. I warned you about his reputation with women. Claremont may be a great scientist, but he's also a notorious asshole. Besides, he's too old for you. He's only 37, Chris, give or take 1,500 years. And I should warn you, Matthew and Fernando are listening to every word we say. With vampires around, a closed door is no guarantee for privacy. How? Did your husband, bug the house? Chris's tone was sharp. No, he's a vampire. They have exceptional hearing. Sometimes honesty really was the best policy. A heavy pot crashed in the kitchen. A vampire? Chris's look suggested that I had lost my mind. Like on TV? Not exactly, I said, proceeding with caution. Telling humans how the world really worked tended to unsettle them. I'd done it only once before, and it had been a huge mistake. My freshman roommate, Melanie, had passed out. A vampire, Chris repeated slowly, as if he were thinking it all through. You'd better sit down. I gestured to the sofa. If he fell, I didn't want him hitting his head. Ignoring my suggestion, Chris plopped himself in the wing chair instead. It was more comfortable, to be sure, but it had been known to forcibly eject visitors it didn't like. I eyed it warily. Are you a vampire too? Chris demanded. No. I perched gingerly on the edge of my grandmother's rocking chair. Are you absolutely sure that Claremont is? That's his children you're carrying, right? Chris sat forward, as though a great deal of depended on the answer. Children. I held up 2 fingers in the air. Twins. Chris threw his hands in the air. Well, no vampire ever knocked a girl on Buffy, not even Spike, and God knows he's never practiced safe sex. Bewitched had provided my mother's generation with their supernatural premiere. For mine, it was Buffy the Vampire Slayer, whichever creature had introduced Joss Whedon to our world had a lot to answer for. I sighed. I'm absolutely positive that Matthew is the father. Chris's attention drifted to my neck. That's not where he bites me. His eyes widened. Where? He shook his head. Nope, don't tell me. It was, I thought, a strange place to draw the line. Chris normally wasn't squeamish or prudish. Still, he hadn't passed out. That was encouraging. You're taking this very well, I said gratefully for his equanimity. I'm a scientist. I'm trained to suspend disbelief and remain open-minded until something is disproven. Chris was now staring at the blasted tree. At the blast tree. Why is there a tree in the fireplace? Good question. We don't really know. Maybe you have other questions I can answer, though? It was an awkward invitation, but I was still worrying he might faint. A few. Once again, Chris's fixed his dark eyes on mine. He wasn't a witch, but it had been very difficult to lie to him for all these years. You say Claremont's a vampire, but you're not. What are you, Diana? I've known for a long time that you aren't like other people. I didn't know what to say. How do you explain to someone you love that you failed to mention your defining characteristic about yourself? I'm your best friend, or I was until Claremont came along. Surely you can trust me enough to come out to me, Chris said. No matter what it is, it won't change anything between us. Beyond Chris's shoulder, a green smudge trailed off the blast tree. The green smudge became an indistinct form of Bridget Bishop, with her embroidered bodice and full skirt. Be canny, daughter. The winds blow from the north, a sign of a battle to come. Who will stand with you and who will stand against you? I had plenty of enemies, but I couldn't afford to lose a single friend. Maybe you don't trust me enough, Chris said softly, when I didn't immediately respond. I'm a witch. My words were barely audible. Okay, Chris waited. And what? That's it? That's what you've been afraid to tell me? I'm not talking neo-pagan, Chris. I'm talking, though I am pagan, of course. I'm talking about abracadabra, a spell-casting, potion-making witch. In this case, Chris's love of Prime TV might actually prove useful. Do you have a wand? No. But I do have a fire drake. That's a kind of dragon. Cool, Chris grinned. Very, very cool. Is that why you stayed out of New Haven? Were you taking a dragon obedience class or something? Matthew and I had to get out of town quickly, that's all. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Where were you? In 1590? Did you get any research done? Chris looked thoughtfully. I suppose that would cause all kinds of citation problems. What would you put in your footnotes? Personal conversation with William Shakespeare? He laughed. I never met Shakespeare. Matthew's friends didn't approve of him. I paused. I did meet the Queen. Even better, Chris said, nodding. Equally impossible to footnote, however. You're supposed to be shocked. This was not at all what I had expected. Don't you want proof? I haven't been shocked by anything since the MacArthur Foundation called me, and if that can happen, anything is possible. Chris shook his head. Vampires and witches. Wow. There are demons too, but their eyes don't glow and they're not evil. Well, no more than any other species. Other species? Chris's tone sharpened with interest. Are there werewolves? Absolutely not, Matthew shouted in the distance. Touchy subject. I gave Chris a tentative smile. So you're really fine with this? Why wouldn't I be? The government spends millions searching for aliens in outer space, and it turns out you're right here. Think of all the grant and money this could free up. Chris had always looked for a way to diminish the importance of the physics department. You can't tell anyone, I said hastily. Not many humans know about us, and we need to keep it that way. We're bound to find out eventually, Chris said. Besides, most people would be thrilled. You think? The dean of Yale College would be thrilled to know that they'd tenured a witch? I raised my eyebrow. My students' parents would be happy to discover that their beloved children are learning about the scientific revolution from a witch. Well, maybe not the dean. Chris's voice dropped. Matthew isn't going to bite me to keep me quiet. Matthew isn't going to bite me to keep me quiet? No, I assured him. Fernando inserted his foot between the keeping room doors and nudged them open. I'd be happy to bite you instead, but only if you asked very nicely, Fernando said. Fernando put a tray on the table. Sarah thought you might like coffee, or something stronger. Call me if you need anything. No need to shout. He gave Chris the kind of dazzling smile he would bestow on the Covenant's female memberships at the Lugnashna potluck. Saddling the wrong horse, Fernando, I warned as he departed. He's a vampire too, Chris whispered. Yep, Matthew's brother-in-law. I held up the whiskey bottle and the coffee pot. Coffee? Whiskey? Both, said Chris, reaching for a mug. He looked at me in alarm. You haven't kept this witch business from your aunt, have you? Sarah's a witch too. So was Em. I poured a healthy sludge of whiskey in his mug and topped it off with a bit of coffee. This is the third or fourth pot of the day, so it's mostly decaf. Otherwise, we would have to scrape Sarah off the ceiling. Coffee makes her fly? Chris took a sip, considering a moment, and added more whiskey. In a manner of speaking, I said, uncapping the water and taking a swig. The babies fluttered, and I gave my abdomen a gentle pat. I can't believe you're pregnant. For the first time, Chris sounded amazed. You've just learned that I spent most of last year in the 16th century, that I have a pet dragon, and that you're surrounded by demons, vampires, and witches. But my pregnancy is the one that you find implausible? Trust me, honey, Chris said, pulling out his best Alabama drawl. It's way more implausible.